honey bunnies. How's it going? Welcome to episode 9 of the Blood Sisterz with a Z podcast. Woo! It is a beautiful Sunday as we are recording in our basement studio. I'm here with my lovely co-host, Tasha Carr. Say hey.
Hey, how y'all doing out there in podcast land?
Podcast land. I imagined it as a beautiful world with like an island and just clear waters and prostitutes and chocolate and wine. The waters are filled with wine. It's not water, it's just wine.
Just wine.
Yes.
All the time.
Wine all the time. Sounds good to me. So before we begin, I want to give you the usual reminders to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Blood Sisterz with a Z. We currently actually have 69 followers, which is pretty nice.
Bam, 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 bam. Slurp, slurp.
Bam, bam, bam. Slurp, slurp. I like that. Although, we are going to need 31 more subscribers in order to get our own URL. So subscribe.
Yes.
That way we don't have to be youtube.com/85 alphabets and some random numbers thrown in there. We can be youtube.com/Blood Sisterz. So if you're able to look us up, Blood Sisterz with a Z on YouTube, please subscribe so that we can throw our URL out there for you.
Yes.
It'll
tell
make us
2
easier to
friends
find.
this week. Not tell 1 friend. Tell 2 friends this week.
2 friends. Anywho. Right. So subscribe. Do all the things, please. So today we will be talking about Charles Albright. He is most commonly known as the eyeball killer.
Wow.
And I read that he was also known as the Dallas Ripper. But most commonly known as the eyeball killer.
I like the eyeball killer better.
I like that too.
Yeah.
If you're sensitive about eyeball talk, just be warned that we do talk in detail about eyeball stuff in here. But still listen. Just put on a blindfold if you need to. Close your eyes. Do whatever you need to do. But his name, he goes by the eyeball ripper. The eyeball killer. Ooh, the eyeball killer. All right. So let's get into the childhood a little bit here. Or a lot of bit. I found a lot of info on this dude.
Oh, good.
Every
we like
time
good information.
I read a different article on him, I found new information.
Nice.
He's got a ton of stuff. On him.
That's what we like.
Right? Charles Frederick Albright was born August 10th of 1933 in Amarillo, Texas, to a young lady who placed him up for adoption. So right away he was born and placed into an orphanage. He only lived there for 3 weeks before he was adopted by parents Fred and Dell Albright, hence the name Charles Albright. His adopted father, Fred, was a grocer, and as far as Dell goes, I read some different things. I read that she was a stay-at-home mom, and I also read that she was a school teacher. It's possible that she might have stayed at home in his early years and then went to work later, maybe.
And that's what I was wondering, too, because I seen the same thing. I was like, did they classify her as a school teacher because she was a teacher to him? Like, I was so confused.
That's true. A school teacher where? At home or somewhere else? They lived in Oak Cliff, Texas. Charles had an interesting childhood, and I am not putting that lightly. This story is interesting. So, Dell had the run of the house and doted on Charles to the point of it almost being a sickness. She made sure that he stayed out of trouble, ate the right foods, etc., just like any quote-unquote good mom would do. However, she went through some serious lengths to make sure that her boy was raised right. She went as far as to keep goats in their backyard so that he didn't have to drink cow's milk and could drink fresh goat's milk instead.
It's healthy, okay.
I don't know. Is that supposed to be better?
I don't know. I just hear bad things about cow milk. I still drink cow's milk, but I hear really bad things about it.
Like, it's all milk that's coming from an animal that's not human, so I'm not sure what the thought process is here.
Me either. I seen a documentary, though. Cow's milk looks really disgusting, like all the things it goes through. It hasn't stopped me, though, and I'm still alive.
Yeah. It tastes fine.
Right, sometimes, yeah.
I mean, personally, like, almond milk has less carbs.
Okay.
So I tend to drink almond milk. But I also learned a lot about the almond milk industry and how almond milk is like not that great for the environment either. So I started drinking oat milk. So far, I haven't heard or learned anything evil about the oat milk industry. So until then, I'll continue to drink the oat milk.
So in the comments, tell us all the bad things about oat milk.
Please.
So that Christina can stop drinking.
I want to make sure I'm doing the most socially, environmentally conscious thing.
And then you got me, you can't shame because I'm going to drink whatever.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, cow's milk is cheaper too. I'd like to be able to just drink cow's milk with... Anyway, Dell really focused all of her efforts on Charles so that he would grow up to be a well-rounded human being. He had to practice the piano for half an hour every day before school, and Dell often told him to respect women. So far, this doesn't seem so terrible, right?
Right.
Well, this is where things start to get a little strange. So Dell would go as far as to tell Charles about his father, Fred, and how he would always want sex from her. So she would tell Charles about how Fred would grab her when she was in her bra and underwear. He was greedy sexually. And this was probably, in Dell's eyes, this might have been an example to Charles of how not to be or how not to treat a lady. But it was more strange than anything else and established a strange relationship between Charles and his mother. If Charles acted up, for example, once he chewed on her tape measure as a child, she would give him really scary punishments, such as leaving him alone in a dark room. And imagine being a kid and being left alone in a dark room. That's scary as heck. If he wouldn't go to sleep, she would even tie him to the bed. So she also didn't want him going outside, doing regular kid stuff because of the chances of him getting into dog feces and contracting polio. Polio was big around that time. He was born in the 30s, so polio was big then. She was able to insert fear into her child's brain by actually taking him to the polio wards at the local hospitals and having him observe patients who were encased in the iron lungs. She would tell him something like, this can be you if you don't behave.
Wow.
So she would even go as far as to change his clothes multiple times a day to avoid dirt. So it was definitely coddled, definitely all kinds of weird stuff. Quote unquote weird. Dell would also tell deceiving stories about his birth mother, which would kind of mess up his views of women. In one story, she told Charles that his birth mother was a young law student who was forced to give him up by her father. In another story, she claimed that the mother was a prostitute. We'll see that later. Neither of these stories were true. The mom was actually a nurse. So I'm not sure if the idea behind these stories was to try and make Charles grateful for her or just to fuck him up or to deter him from seeking her out later in life.
I had no idea she was a nurse. So the thing I've read, it said that she possibly could have been a prostitute. Wow.
Like maybe she could have been. You know, I mean, it was more common then too.
It's possible that this woman made up that story and now these other sources that are reporting on it are just running with her lie. So years later, her lie is still holding weight. That's crazy.
Maybe.
Have fun. Okay, go
Or
ahead.
maybe she was a nurse by day. Maybe she turned tricks by night.
We all got to have multiple incomes.
Right. You got to have a side job.
Exactly.
Got to have a backup plan.
Yes.
Everyone's got to have a backup plan, right? This is our backup plan. This is my backup plan. The podcast. Subscribe. So, as if that wasn't enough crap for Charles, she would also dress him up in girls' clothing. Apparently, especially when his aunt came to visit. So I don't know if it was like a source of entertainment for the aunt or what, but he would be dressed up in girls' clothing. At the age of 11, he showed an interest in taxidermy, and his mother enrolled him in an actual taxidermy school. He was even gifted a gun, which he used to shoot small animals. His mother would help him out with the animals to scoop out the brains, stuff them, prepare them for display, all that jazz. This is where we start to really see how some of the qualities of the eyeball killer himself came to be. So upon completion of these taxidermied animals, you're supposed to get these really beautiful glass eyeballs and put those in where the eyes used to be. So Dell, being a very frugal lady, would not purchase these expensive eyeballs. Instead, she would sew buttons where the eyes should have been. Charles obviously wanted the marble eyeballs for his creations so much that he would actually visit the store where the eyeballs were sold, and he would just stare at them. He just wanted to be around them. He wanted to touch them. He wanted to collect them the way that children collected marbles. He wanted the eyeballs. Eventually, the china cabinet in their home would be where they displayed all of their animals, and it was placed in a position so that when you walked into the home, the first thing you saw was all of those dead animals with the button eyes in the china cabinet.
Creepy.
Yes. Taxidermy button-eyed animals. So, while we're on this subject of frugality, I will also say that Dell also dressed herself frugally. She shopped at thrift stores, and she would get leftover bones and meat from the butcher to make food with. But the thing is, they were financially stable. They didn't have any money issues. There was really no reason for her to be acting this way, but she did. So what I'm saying is that she could have honestly afforded to get him those dang eyeballs.
Right.
Like, I'm not sure what her thought process was there, but besides the taxidermy, Charles excelled at school and was talented at art, science, and sports. However, he also excelled at being a thief. At the age of 13, he was arrested for aggravated assault. I wasn't really able to find any information on what he actually did for the aggravated assault, but he was arrested for that at the age of 13. When Charles was 14 in 1947 at this point, his parents bought a piece of property and gave it to Charlie. Charlie then apparently sold it to buy more property, and he was featured in the Dallas Times-Herald about it with a headline that read, "World's youngest real estate man amassing nest egg for college."
Okay, now.
Right. So you're like, oh, he's a little hustler. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I see this cutie. He knows he's smart. He knows stuff about real estate. He's getting himself a nest egg for college. Okay. Seems like a young man who's got his head on his shoulders.
Gonna be thriving in the community.
Right. One thing that he did not excel at was with the ladies. I will say that. In school, his mother would actually accompany him on any dates. So if he went out with a girl, she would actually tag along with them for the whole date. Of course, that didn't last long. He didn't get many more dates after the word spread, but the reasoning for this was to make sure, apparently, that Charles did not do anything untoward to the girls. The mother would even call the parents of the girls to say, "Don't worry, Charles will behave himself." Which I'm sure was reassuring for the parents at some point, but it was weird for the mom to actually escort him to every part of the date.
And as a mom, you're going in already like, I don't know what my son is capable of. So to
do you
protect
really wanna
your
know?
daughter, she's going to be safe because I'm going to be there. If I wasn't there, she might not be safe. Like, you should
Right.
already know, like, I'm raising an upstanding guy.
Right.
Oh,
Like she made sure to go out of her way to try and make sure that he would respect women. Do you think that you actually did a good job, or what? What's the deal here?
We're going to find out.
Nonetheless, his mother was able to help him skip 2 whole grades, being a school teacher, and he graduated high school at the age of 15. He enrolled at North Texas State College and majored in pre-med, saying that he wanted to be a surgeon. He actually started pre-med classes but failed out of them. He could not handle it. At the age of 16, he was caught having been involved in a burglary ring with some of his classmates. He was caught with some of the merchandise in his room, and he actually went so far as to say that it was his friends and he was just holding it for them.
Oh, classic line.
Right. Later that same year, he was caught again being a thief with guns and a rifle, as well as some petty cash. This case did go to court, and Dell, being the mother of the year, or whatever she wants to think she is, she tried as best as she could to protect her baby. She went to the stores offering to reimburse the businesses for the stolen goods. She even tried acting as his lawyer. And when he was ultimately sentenced to 2 years in prison, she actually offered to serve the sentence for him.
That's good.
So, since you can't serve someone else's sentence for them,
Right.
he was put away and released after just about a year. He spent his 18th birthday locked up.
They won't let me out.
I will say this. A juvenile probation officer who had come to see him actually stated that it was the first time that they witnessed someone who was able to convince themselves of a lie. So Charles was actually able to convince himself that he didn't steal anything, and he believed himself. So his brain is definitely working in some interesting ways here. His sense of reality seems to be a little altered.
A little bit.
A little bit. After that release, he enrolled in another college. This time it was Arkansas State Teachers College, and he majored in pre-med again. It was while spending his time at this college that he became pretty involved. He was president of the French Club, a yearbook business manager, and served on the student council. He also played on the football team. So he would also be known for being quite the prankster. During this time, he made a friend named Andrew who had dated the most beautiful girl on campus.
Not the most beautiful.
Right. Apparently, she was the most beautiful girl on campus. All right. So when she ultimately broke up with Andrew's ass, she was probably like, I'm too good for this dude. I'm over it. She broke up with Andrew. He was hurt, and he took his ex's pictures and threw them in the trash. But fear not. Andrew would actually have a new girlfriend in just a few weeks. So whatever. We don't care about Andrew. Anywho, Charles decided to play a prank by taking the photos of his old girlfriend out of the wastebasket. And get this, he cut the eyes out of the photographs. He then took a pair of the eyeballs and he placed them into a photograph of Andrew's new girlfriend.
Wow.
So he was looking at his girlfriend's picture. One day, Andrew was looking at his girlfriend's picture and noticed that something was off when he realized that the eyeballs had been replaced.
That's a good prank.
I mean, it's kind of good, right?
If you're a jerk,
it's good in a weird, creepy way. Like, it's a good, subtle prank. Charles also took more pairs of the eyeballs of the old girlfriend and placed them throughout areas that Andrew frequented. So there would be a pair of eyeballs in the bathroom above the urinal. There would be a pair of eyeballs on the wall above the bed, everywhere. Andrew just thought it was a good prank, but we are now starting to see even more so how Charles is just absolutely fascinated with eyes.
And I read it was there were some on the ceiling. So imagine you go to sleep, you wake up, you open your eyes, and your ex's eyeballs are looking down at you from the ceiling.
Woof.
What a horrible prank.
I don't want to look at that. I don't want to look at any ex's eyes.
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you. They're exes for a reason. It's in his psyche somewhere now. This eyeballs, since the taxidermy times, we can see how it's like ingrained in him somewhere. He also did your usual pranks, such as sneaking into a professor's office and stealing the answers to a test, which he would share with his friends. So some usual stuff peppered in with some creepy stuff. Got to keep a balance somewhere. So after eventually being caught with some stolen items again, he was expelled from the college, but not prosecuted. This obviously must have unfazed Charles, as he went on to go ahead and falsify his bachelor's degree and also falsified a master's degree. He married his college girlfriend, and they had a daughter. He would even forge checks and eventually went on to become a biology teacher at a local high school where he coached football and was incredibly charming and popular. All the football dudes wanted to have him as a mentor. Everyone swooned over him. He was eventually found out about his crimes, falsifying these documents, and he was ultimately fired. However, since he seemed repentant for the crimes, they actually kept the whole story very hush-hush, and he was let go with just being placed on a year's probation. So he's really not getting punished for any of the shit that he's done so far.
Yep.
He then went on to become a sort of dabbler in all the things. He couldn't keep a job for much longer than 3 months after that. He worked as a carpenter. He had worked making baseball bats at one point. And he had also, I guess, told people that he was a bullfighter at one time. And he even went and got his beautician license at one point and started working at a hair salon, going by the name Mr. Charles.
Okay, Mr. Charles. Yes.
Mr. Charles.
Gotta do that here.
Right? Mr. Charles. Mr. Charles and his wife, Mrs. Charles, would become separated in 1965, and they would eventually divorce in 1974. So he was around 41 at the time of the divorce. He was also caught stealing from a hardware store and would serve another sentence of about 6 months. And of course, while serving this sentence, Mama Dell comes to the rescue, and she lied for him, saying that he was off on a very important job. Whatever, Mama Dell. Once released again, he continued to do odd jobs, getting involved with the church and even singing in the choir. Everyone loved him, and the neighborhood had even taken to letting him babysit their children. One day, while babysitting one of his friend's daughters, it would be found out that he had actually sexually assaulted her, and she was 14 years old at the time. He pled guilty to this and only received probation for the crime, since the parents didn't want to put their daughter through a trial. Just some extra stuff in the timeline of his life. In 1981, Dell, his mom, would die of cancer. And he did start a closer relationship with his father, Frank. He didn't have much of a relationship with his father up until that point. 1984, Charles applied to be a leader for the Boy Scouts of America and was denied. Thank goodness.
Okay.
Right? Like, did the Boy Scouts of America know something that everyone didn't? Anywho, the following year in 1985, Charles starts dating a new woman named Dixie. And in 1986, his father, Fred, dies of a heart attack. Charles inherits $96,000, and Charles convinces Dixie to move in with him. Dixie became eventually the breadwinner, working in a gift shop during the day, while Charles stayed home, living off of the inheritance and collecting money from his parents' rental properties, which he kept in his father's name for sentimental reasons. He was still scheming, though. He would eventually get a paper route as a side job, only to hide the fact that he was frequenting the local sex workers in the area. So he was living a little bit of a double life. He was, in this long-term relationship with Dixie. He had this paper route, but while he was doing this paper route, he was actually getting some. Yep.
I was expecting you to say that he was also getting some.
He was getting some.
Ooh, that got dark.
He was getting some.
Okay.
And some.
Well, while he was getting some this entire time, so just to kind of paint a picture of how Dallas or the Dallas area looked, during this time, Dallas had over 500 homicides. It was the worst they had seen at that time. And in Oak Cliff, they had a lot of crime, prostitution, and drugs. And one of the documentaries that I watched, one of the people actually said that it was the part of Dallas that they were ashamed of at the time. So most prostitutes there were addicted to drugs. And they had a pimp and a very violent history. So you can kind of understand the environment at the time that these crimes kind of took place. Now, December 13th, 1990, a partially nude and shot in the back of the head with a .44 caliber bullet, with her arms over her head, body of 35-year-old Mary Lou Pratt was found just out in the open, lying face up. Now, she was known as a street prostitute, and she was found wearing just a T-shirt. It was very common, as I said earlier, that for the prostitutes to be found beaten, raped, and even murdered. So this was a standard case, and it probably would have not gotten a lot of attention at the time. So when the medical examiner went to open Mary's eyes during the autopsy, he was shocked to find that the eyeballs had been removed with surgical precision. Now, it was done so perfectly that the FBI determined that the murder itself was not the murderer's only motivation. Clearly, he wanted to take these trophies with him. So he cut the eyeballs out so perfectly not to actually disturb them, and so that they were kept in pristine shape, right? So beat cops Regina Smith and John Matthews, they talked to the women in the red light district on Jefferson, asking them for some clues. They told them that they felt the killer was someone that Mary had known. Now, Mary, like most of the other local prostitutes, she was known to work in a very small area on Jefferson Boulevard. She wanted to stay close to her friends, and she also wanted to stay close to her pimp. Now, local prostitute Veronica Rodriguez gave them a break in the case that, of course, they did not take and they took for granted. Now, Veronica actually showed up with a gash on her throat and her forehead, and she told them that it was because she almost got killed and she had to jump into a drain to escape. She was with Mary on the night that she was murdered. The two of them went on a double date with a John, and when he attacked them, she got away by hiding in a drain because she was so small. But Mary was not so lucky. Now, this entire scene was pretty dramatic, as she said that she ran through the field partially nude, barefoot, and the John at this time, we don't know who he is, he ran behind her in the field shouting her name, looking for her. Now, can you imagine that? You're trying to escape this man. You're half naked. You're hiding in the drain, probably sobbing, terrified out of your mind. And he's running through the script field like, Christina!
I'm like,
get back out here.
I would be like holding my breath.
Right.
It's hard to breathe right now, but I'm going to be released.
Oh, my God. Poor Veronica. But thankfully, Veronica did get away. She ran then to a house of someone that she knew who thankfully stayed nearby, and she hid out for the night. Now, because Veronica was on drugs, the cops didn't fully believe her story. They thought this is just the kind of story Veronica always telling, whatever, we're going to disregard her.
Right. They figured that she was like strung out on drugs a lot of the time. She just made up shit.
Yeah, so this is a common Veronica thing. Veronica's like, I seen a dragon. Of course, this is not actual, but Veronica's like, I seen a dragon. He came and he took her. Like, so people like, it's just Veronica being Veronica. But they should have, we see in this case down the line, they should have listened to Veronica. So 2 days later, and then also I want to point out the fact that they didn't listen to Veronica, even though Veronica was kind of known to be on drugs and kind of fabricate stories. It was clear that Veronica had been attacked. She had a gash on her neck and also on her forehead. So it was clear that Veronica escaped some type of traumatic event. Now, 2 days later, Officer Smith and Matthews, who I talked about earlier, they went to check out a suspicious truck, and they opened the back door to find, guess who? Veronica. She's in the back with this guy named Axton Schindler. Now, Veronica, she kept screaming to the cops. She's like, he saved me. This is the guy I told you about. Don't you arrest him. Leave him alone. Leave him alone. Leave him alone. And the cops are like, girl, be quiet. Now, at this time, Axton, I don't know if because he's scared or what, he's not verifying this story. So he's just sitting there kind of like, oh, shit, shut up, Veronica. I ain't gonna say nothing. So the address that he ends up giving the cops, it's actually not, well, it's where he stayed, but it's the address owned by his landlord. Who's his landlord?
Who is it?
57-year-old Charles Albright. Charles! You got it. Charlie Mack.
And it was still in his father's name. So
yeah,
they had eventually figured out like, oh, that's his father, Charles. Mm-hmm. Charles is the son. This is Charles Albright.
Baby
we're
Charles.
Talking about. Yep.
Yeah, Big Papa Charles already dead.
Papa Charles.
Yes.
Rip.
So 2 months after, we're going to get back to that because that all ties in together. Now, 2 months after Mary's body is found on February 10th, 1991, the body of Susan Peterson was found kind of in the same area, okay? Now, she was shot, again, like Mary. She was put out right in the open, partially nude, with her T-shirt pulled up so that her breasts were exposed. Now, this time, the victim was shot in the top of her head, in her left breast, and then the back of her head.
The left breast. Ain't
Left
that a
breast.
bitch?
Yes.
Right, if I'm gonna die, like keep my breast intact.
Right, you already shot me in the
I
head
want
twice.
my boobie. Let me die with my boobie. Damn.
Now one bullet entered the heart and another entered her brain. So he even then went on, and this part I didn't understand, but he placed a clump of hair on her chest.
A clump of hair?
Yeah, I read that in one place, and I was like, a clump of hair?
Like a clump of his hair or a clump of her hair?
Not his hair. God, he wasn't that dumb.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
He's a little dumb, but
yeah, a little
bit,
but not that dumb. No, it was a clump of her hair he actually placed on her chest. So I don't know if that came from him beating her, or if he cut it out or pulled it out or what happened, but they found a clump of her hair on her chest as well. So clearly he wanted both bodies to be found, and he had zero respect for these women or the communities that he was dumping them in, because he put them out in the open. He shot them like they were nothing, and we don't even know if he removed the eyes at this point. So let me save that part. So the cops, they like, hey, medical examiner guy, doctor, check the eyes. He checks the eyes right away, and boom, eyeballs are missing.
Eyeballs missing. So now they have confirmed we're clearly looking for a serial killer. I think serial is 3 or more, but we're going to go ahead and call him a serial killer at this point because it's a pattern. Yeah.
He's removing the eyeballs with surgical precision. We have 2 now.
Read that the first body was found. The first 2 bodies were found on the same street, right?
See, and that's the thing. So I put the same area because one said that it was found on the same street, but when I read it, it said they were found in the same area. But she was out of the police, like
different jurisdictions.
Jurisdiction, yeah. So that means that they couldn't have been found on the same street.
They couldn't have, like, the jurisdiction was separated at a point where, like, say the jurisdiction's here, and it was here, the first body, and then second body. They were close, but
they were not the same street.
They were technically in different jurisdictions, even though they were like geographically close.
Yeah, so that's why I changed it, because I did first put like, oh, they're found on the same street, but then I read something else and I was like, clearly that's not the same street. But yeah, they were found very close, same area. All right. So if you guys know exactly where they were found, comment in the comments.
Yeah.
We like learning things.
Get some pictures.
Okay. So the police now have confirmed that, all right, we have a pattern going on. So they go out and they warn all the prostitutes. They like, hey, y'all in danger. Get off the streets. We need y'all to be safe. The prostitutes, because clearly no one turns to prostitution just for fun, they didn't have a way out. So these women don't have jobs. They don't have family. They don't have a safety
support
net.
System.
They don't have a support system to fall back on. So these women, and they're addicted to drugs at this point too. So even though they know that it's dangerous to be out here, they have no choice.
Yeah.
So they keep on working the corners, right? Sadly, it's just the current reality. Now, one sidebar I do want to say before I tell you about the third crime. So Christina told you guys earlier how Mr. Charlie worked at the beauty salon store,
Mr.
right?
Charlie, yes.
So there was one guy who asked Mr. Charlie to do a portrait of his wife. So Charlie was like, yeah, I got you.
He's known as a talented artist.
Right.
He's like, yeah, I can do that.
I'm a talented artist. I was a bullfighter. I sold baseball bats. I got this. You want me to draw? Period. Let's do it. So the guy's like, he recalled that it was taking Charlie a little time to finish the portrait. So he's like, yo, are you almost done, Charlie? And he was like, almost. I got one more thing to finish.
Got to make sure it's exactly
Make sure it's perfect. So the guy ends up getting a glimpse of the portrait of his wife. And he even recalled, he's like, this was a perfect depiction of my wife. Like, it was perfect. But there was one thing missing.
What would that have been?
You guessed it, the eyeballs. So he really, like, he was talented. The guy was happy with the drawing, the depiction of his wife, this beautiful portrait, but the eyeballs had not been drawn in yet.
He was trying to get it just right.
Apparently. And so you can imagine, he probably erased 1,000,000 times, like, this is not right. I got to capture these eyes just right. Or maybe he liked the look of women without eyes and he never even drew the eyes in.
Maybe he touched himself to the picture of it a little bit.
Without the eyes.
Like, ooh, without the eyes. I like that. Without the eyeballs.
Damn, Mr. Charlie. That picture probably would go for $1 million now if he still had it. Oh, my
gosh. Wow. I wonder where that is. See if we can find it.
I won't buy it, but I look at
Mr. Charlie's friend.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't want to know how much it is, but
I want to look at it. I definitely want to see it. See how talented he was.
Right. I mean, especially doing a portrait like that takes a lot of talent to be able to paint a portrait of a person and have it be a really good depiction of that person. So.
Right. And at the same time, he's juggling 18 other jobs. So, I mean, he's very talented.
He's got his baseball bat business.
Bull riding.
He's playing softball or
doing
whatever the heck
hair.
else he's doing.
Jesus.
Mr. Charlie.
Mr. Charlie. Now, with 2 murders confirmed from the same serial killer, this case clearly got picked up by all media outlets. So the police are at this point, they're worried. They're like, okay, this guy, if he senses that we're close to getting to closing in on him, he's going to change his MO, which a lot of killers do. And Mr. Charlie did. So on March 18th, 1991, Shirley Williams, a black woman and part-time prostitute, her body was found. Now, his first 2 victims were white. She was his first black victim. This time, she was also completely naked. She was lying on her side. Her face had been completely mutilated. She was shot several times, and her body was left out by a schoolyard where children could have easily found her. She had a broken nose. She was shot in the face and through the top of her head. When they opened her eyes, they were not shocked this time. They were missing. Now, the first 2 cases, they actually had the medical examiner open her eyes. This was the first case where the cops were like, open her eyes.
Let's check.
Let's just check it. We already know what we're going to see.
Yeah.
So, again, they opened her eyes. They seen that her eyes were removed. Now, with the first 2 victims, their eyes were removed perfectly and surgically, like this person had some skill with it. This time he seemed to had been rushed, and there were marks around her eyes, and part of an X-Acto blade was left in one of her eye sockets.
Lodged in there.
Yep. So now Charlie, 57, fast forward back to Charlie, he had become popular in his community, right? He was happy, he had a great sense of humor. Everybody loved him. Now, Charlie had actually at this time joined a softball team, and they recalled him as being against physical altercation. I just found this to be an interesting fact. Because, usually serial killers are very aggressive, but they actually recalled him like when anything got a little rough, he was like, nah, y'all, let's love, peace. Soul Train,
Soul Train.
I'm not sure he wasn't watching Soul Train, but
Train. He probably had no idea what that was.
Right, but he was a very peaceful man. So one of the stories that they actually told, it was at the end of the softball game, right? 2 young women had drove by. His teammates joked because they like paused, I guess, like it was like an awkward ass, like they were looking for somebody. So a few of his teammates were like, ha, 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 I bet they prostitutes. Charlie, go hit that. Go try to get you some of that, right? And so Charlie, out of character, completely turns dark. He responds, I hate prostitutes. If I had my choice, I'd kill them all. Teammates like, whoa, that took a turn for the worse. We thought you were going to joke around. Like, how much,
Like, right.
Now, going back to Charlie, Christina had already talked about how his wife, she's not his current wife, not wife number 1, wife number 2, Dixie from Arkansas. Yeah. So she's none the wiser because Charlie picks up this morning paper route, right? So while he's out working, she's just like, oh, my man just getting some extra money so we can pay for food and bills. Okay. At this time, Charlie's actually going down and he's visiting local prostitutes. Now, one of the prostitutes actually commented that he would give them food. He would give them extra money, not even for sex, just to survive. He's like, hey, how's it going? It's actually kind of hard. Here's an extra $20, get some food for the night. These prostitutes now are feeling safe with Charlie. He's here enough. He's taking care of them, and he's giving them extra money. Like he's one of their common Johns.
And he would actually like bail them out of jail.
Yeah, like he's actually here providing services for these women that no one else is giving them, giving them attention and care.
One of them had actually listed him as her
emergency
best
contact.
friend. Yeah. Emergency contact / best friend.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden things flip, right? He starts tying the women up. He starts hitting them. He's cursing at them. He's being all around aggressive during sex. So clearly this was just an act from him. He's like, as soon as I get you and you feel safe with me, let your guard down. Now I can actually be myself. So after the 3rd murder, all the prostitutes, they go into hiding now because now they're like, okay, clearly this is an issue. Even though I don't know how I'm going to survive, if I want to survive, I need to go into hiding, right? So at this time, you couldn't find prostitutes as common as you could, not on every street corner, because they are terrified. Brenda White, a prostitute, she ends up telling cops about an older white male with salt and pepper hair in a station wagon who wanted to take her down to some property that he had. Now, I will mention that Charlie, this is what he did with the prostitutes that he would get. He would take them to one of the rental properties that he inherited from his parents. Now, Brenda is a veteran prostitute. She's like, no. I know how this works. I ain't going nowhere with you.
She was smart.
She was smart.
Yeah.
Charlie becomes so enraged, she literally has to mace him just to escape and get out of the car and be safe. So now the cops are like, wait a minute, salt and pepper, station wagon. Call Veronica up. Veronica, remember, is the one that they were like, she's always on drugs.
We thought she was crazy, but let me think a second here. Maybe she's got something.
Yep. So Veronica, the prostitute or woman, let's call her a woman. I don't want to keep referring to them as prostitutes because they're still victims and they're women. Veronica, the woman who was with Mary the night that they decided to double team or have the double date, in her words, with the John. They call her up, and the guy that she claimed saved her, this is what I found interesting, they didn't think he was a suspect because he was so tiny he could not and shy. They didn't see him being able to overpower the women. and that's so crazy to me because all of these murders and kidnappings, they took place with a gun. So no matter how tiny you are.
Right. You could be scrawny as heck, but if you have a weapon, you have a gun, you can control people however you want. That's why people have a gun.
Stupid. So stupid. But whatever, we digress. Now, when they went to the address that he gave them, it was near where Shirley was dumped, that last address. Now, they turned their attention to the landlord because, as Christina already said, this place was not even in Charlie's name. It was in his papa's name. They found out Papa had gone. All right, let's look at this landlord. They ended up finding out, and I see this one place, so I'm going to go with this, that a few of the properties that he had were actually near the dumping sites for the other two women as well. So they were like, okay, now the cops excited. They're like, okay, we got our man. Yeah. Okay. We got our man. Boom. We finna get him. So early morning, they break into his house and like, pop, pop, raise your hands. So Charlie's sitting there butt naked. I don't know if he's naked. I'm making this totally dramatic. Charlie's butt naked. He's like, what are y'all in my house for? And they're like, you killed these women. We're going to rescue you. So Charlie's completely confused. He's pretending he has no idea why he's arrested.
I don't know what's happening.
Right. He's like, who the hell doing?
I'm just a little boy.
Right. So one of the cops, he actually recalled that there was a certain terrifying darkness in his eyes. Now, as they search,
the lack of marble eyes.
Right.
He's got the button eyes now, for real.
Yeah.
He's got the button eyes.
Charlie. Now, as they search his house, they find no evidence. They heartbroken. They like, we can't find anything. There is nothing here tying this man to any of the murders. So they actually removed a cover from the fireplace and they found 7 or 8 guns inside of the fireplace, hidden. In the fireplace.
Oh,
and these women are murdered with guns. They can't connect any of the guns to the victims. None of those 7 or 8 guns were used to kill these women. Yep.
Cool.
So then they also found a few X-Acto knives, right?
Oh, great.
They like, we got X-Acto knives. None of them connected to the murders. Can't find anything on them. No idea if these weapons have been used, right?
Big fart.
So they find no evidence. They find no eyes, no blood, no nothing. Now, Dr. Irving Stone, he's a forensic scientist at this time. He noticed a baseball hat, I should say, on the floor. And he asked, he's like, who house is this? What's the suspect name? So they tell him, like, Charlie, Mr. Charlie Albright. He's surprised to find out that this is the same right fielder Charlie who he's befriended, who's been on his team all this time. So when he came this is such a funny story to me. When he came face to face with Charlie at the station, like later, he's like, Charlie's shackled. He got his hands, feet, everything shackled. He's being dragged in by cops. Charlie sees him. He smiles. He's like, Irv, come give me a hug. So Irv got an attitude. He like, I just looked at him like, are you serious? And just walked away.
Come give me a hug.
So he sees his friend who's a forensic scientist, and he's like, I know I'm being charged with murder, but what's up, homie? I ain't seen you. I miss you. And Irv's telling this story like, I can't believe this mofo. Like, you in front of all my colleagues, you like Big Irv.
Big Irv.
Yeah. I just found that was a fun little story.
Oh, goodness gracious.
So the police, they then go on to
nerve.
search. Yeah. They then go on to search his barn. They find snakes and pickled animals everywhere, right? They thought one of the eyeballs in one of the animals could have been human.
Oh.
So they're excited. They're like, okay, crack this thing open. Let's get it down to forensic. Let's just go ahead and test the eyeballs. It was pig's eyeballs. So again, we coming up empty-handed. There's nothing we got, right? So they thankfully end up finding the site with the help of one of the women who used to work with Shirley in the corners. They end up finding the actual site where Shirley was murdered, all right? Because at this point, they just found the bodies. So the murders are not happening where they find the bodies. So they find the site where Shirley was murdered. And until now, their case seemed circumstantial. It wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough, right?
They didn't have enough, like, actual hard evidence against him.
They found her coat, and there was hair on her coat that they could not identify. So they ended up finding that same hair inside of Charlie's vacuum.
It took them like a week to actually identify what the heck kind of hair it was. They had not seen it like ever before.
Yep. They ended up having to go to the zoo to confirm. Yes, they actually took these hair samples to the zoo. That's how long it was. They're like, what the hell? Let's go to the zoo and figure out what the hell this is.
I want to go to the zoo.
You know what the hair was identified as? Did you figure that out?
Yeah.
What was it?
It was a squirrel tail hair. From a squirrel tail.
Yes, it took them that long to figure out. They had to go to a zoologist. I don't know if that's a name. And that is, okay, cool. To figure out this is actually hair from a squirrel. So this now is the only thing that we can connect Charlie with. It's like we found this unidentified hair on Shirley's coat. We found her dumping site. We found this same hair in the vacuum.
Yep. They had to like go into the vacuum bag. This was before like actual, newer vacuums. They had to get into the vacuum or get into the bag that was in the vacuum, and they dissected everything. They found like one hair that matched the squirrel tail hair on the coat.
It's crazy that they got that tip and they were able to find her coat. That's the only thing that got Charlie would have been out here living his best life still. Yeah.
I believe it.
Charlie now is officially charged with Shirley's murder. And even though he couldn't be linked to the other two, they still brought it up in court. They like, hey, what about this? Let's include these other two. I know he's not on trial for them. We can't prove he did anything to these women. We couldn't find any evidence. But we also believe because of the way that this woman was murdered, he clearly did it too. Now, on December 18th, 1991, the jury found Charles Albright guilty of murdering Shirley and sentenced to life in prison. Now, we did touch on it earlier. It was never confirmed. But they suspected that his hate for prostitutes because his mother could have been a prostitute. But now we're learning his mother was a nurse. So they suspected his hate for prostitutes was because his adoptive mother told him that his birth mother
Dell,
was a
dude.
Mm-hmm.
Dell was making up shit about the birth mom.
Yep. Stupid Dale. Now, for years, he would talk about his obsession with eyes, and even in his prison cell, he would have beautiful drawings of women's eyes. And they assumed that his adopted mother, she sensed his energy being dark. I seen this on one of the end of the documentaries, and they're like, we feel that she sensed he was dark, and that's why she controlled everything. Not just because she was a controlling woman. It's because
she didn't know shit.
Yeah, somehow she sensed that he was born evil, and she was trying to protect the world. No. The woman was just crazy and controlling and manipulative.
Yeah, absolutely.
And until this day, Charlie is still alive, chilling, drawing eyeballs, got them plastered all over his walls.
He's in the John Montford Psychiatric Unit in Lubbock, Texas, where he continues to live to this day.
Till this day.
I did see some random interview of him that he did on A Current Affair, something like that. And as he got older, his ears got bigger. I will say that. Yep.
Stupid Charlie.
Stupid Charlie.
So,
He's like in his 70s now.
Yeah.
He's like 79, 80, something like that.
And
he's getting up there.
He was kind of handsome. Like, okay, when he was a child, not so much. And then like midlife, I was like, ooh, Charlie.
Young 20s.
Yeah, he was handsome. And now he's back.
There was like a good couple of good looking years that he had. And then his looks just went downhill.
Yeah, they definitely did.
That's why you want to stay with someone for a good long while to make sure that their looks don't go somehow.
Christina.
Before you commit.
I can get behind that.
I'm just saying.
I can get behind that.
Imagine marrying someone and then like maybe a year in, it's like, why is your face changing?
Right. So you got to meet their parents too. If their parents are still alive, but like,
yeah, I got to see what they look like. Like,
yeah.
Oh, you look okay. All right. Maybe you'll grow into that.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, you don't know for sure. You got to make sure you really love them.
Free advice from the Blood Sisterz here.
You got to ask yourself, would you still love them if they were ugly?
Oh, shit. That brings us to this week. That brings us to this week's cold-hearted questions. So we're doing a new thing for these last few weeks where we are surprising each other with these questions. To be honest, we used to kind of cheat and give each other a heads up on what the questions were. Now we're just learning at the same time as you guys. So Mata, hit me.
It's more of a funny question. Not really funny, but if you had a child who showed an interest in very dark things like taxidermy, things that I'm not sure if you would be interested in taxidermy, but like things that you weren't necessarily interested in, would you go ahead and still support those things? Like if he was into taxidermy, would you go ahead and buy him the taxidermy eyeballs?
Okay. This is crap. I want to tell this much about my life. And maybe I do. I think I've told this story before. So, yes and no.
Okay.
Only reason why I will say yes is because when I was very young, I used to do what I called experiments in my bedroom. Okay?
Ooh,
I know. I wanted to be a scientist. My mother used to give me all these science kits. I was excited. And so I realized as an adult, it was just sick. Like I would trap bees in the backyard on like my grandmother's post. I would trap them in a bottle.
Ooh.
I would shake them up really hard so that when I opened the bottle, they couldn't really fly away. I would rip the wings off, and then I would put them back in the bottle.
Okay.
Or like when I would get ants, I would like somehow like I release them every day, and then I burn them for a few hours a day or a few minutes a day, and then I put them back in the bottle, and I just track how long they would survive with continued torture.
Okay.
My mother, bless her heart, I love her to death. I'm a child. I'm innocent. I'm happy. I'm like, these are experiments. Like I'm tracking my progress. I'm not
experimentally torturing small
insects.
Bugs.
Yes. I'm like, this is cool. It's amazing. My mother came in when she caught me in the middle of one of my ant dissections. Okay. And she's like, you little weird ass, stop doing it. and little Tasha was like, ow. Weird.
That hurts.
I want to be the fuck? I thought I was doing scientific work. Like I was going to change the world with these findings. So I say I would support them only because, because of that. Looking back though, as an adult, I'm happy my mom did it because who's to say I wouldn't have moved on to bigger animals? Things. Yeah. Like I had a really dark mind as a child. Like they should have gotten me help. They didn't. They failed, but whatever. I love them.
Oh my gosh.
So I should have gotten help a long time ago. So I want to say that I would be supportive, but it depends on what they're trying to do. Taxidermy is so common, and not everyone who practices that goes on to become a serial killer. So even though I don't understand it, I would still be supportive. But if they start experiments, air quotes, I would definitely not like my mom. I'm not going to call my child weird and make them feel like shit at 6.
Right.
But I would definitely be like, hey, that's cool. Let's try this.
Let's try doing something a little different. Let's send that in a different direction here. Right. That's really, really funny that you mentioned that because when I was a little older than 6.
But I was 6. I was probably like 10.
Early. I was like early 12, 13.
Okay.
I would get flies. You know those like 50-cent machines, you get something in a little bubble?
Yeah.
I would capture flies in a little bubble, I would capture it in the little 50-cent bubble.
Yeah.
Right. And then I would do little experiments on it, like while it was trapped in the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's the
like
best way.
I would run it under like hot water and see how it would react to hot temperatures. I would just leave it sit there in the regular, like in my room, and just see how it would act, within a few days, if it would go crazy from just like being stuck in the little bubble. Yeah, I did. As soon as you said that, I was just like,
we
my
were
soul
meant to
sister.
be. Right.
You were my soul sister.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's really, yeah. And my grandma knew, but I don't think she knew how much I enjoyed my experience.
Yeah.
She was just kind of like, she's doing something interesting. All right, whatever.
It's keeping her quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
Keeping
that's why
her
it took my
occupied.
mom so long to catch on, because she's like, she's quiet. I don't care.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So would you support your child then?
I think that I definitely would, but it would be a matter of keeping that balance of like giving them the freedom to figure that stuff out for themselves, but then also monitoring it at the same time to make sure that they didn't get too violent with anything.
Mm-hmm.
So just like maybe periodically checking in, like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, great, I stabbed this one in the heart. And I'd be like, oh, we don't want to do that. Let me get you therapy.
Right. Like if every time the kid enters the house, Digit goes the other way, we're like, okay, something's going on. Why is Digit scared of you? The fuck you doing to my cat?
Digits are, what's the word?
Mascot?
Mascot? Yeah, that she could be our mascot. She could also be our detector.
Yes.
Detector of bad people.
Serial killer detector.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
digital. Well, that is the story of Charlie Frederick Albright.
Ooh. Episode 9 in the books.
9.
Next week is episode 10, and that's the end of season 1.
Yes,
oh
guys.
my goodness.
And I will put it out there for anyone listening. We, for season 2, are going to switch it up a little tad bit. Just a little bit. If you live in the Milwaukee area and you yourself are a serial killer, and I'm just kidding, and you have a fascination with dark things, serial killers. Now, you can be addicted to the why. You can be addicted to just the how. We don't care. Hit us up. We also have our email, whattheblood2020@gmail.com. You can comment on our Facebook page, Blood Sisterz with a Z. We're also on Instagram now at Blood Sisterz with a Z podcast. Go ahead and say, hey, y'all, I would love to come in for one episode with y'all. We are looking for guest co-hosts.
Yeah. Do a random part. Give us a cold-hearted question to answer.
Yeah.
We're definitely down.
And I know we're called Blood Sisterz, but if you got some extra stuff going on down below, we'll allow you to come in here.
As a guest.
As a guest. No permanent.
Not a permanent staple, but
yeah.
boys are okay for one episode.
Exactly. I got one person in mind. We already know, my boo thing, David. So
David,
come in and hang out with us in the studio. So yes, guys, if you're interested, please be sure to hit up myself, Christina, or Rachel. So Rachel again this week is
on vacay.
She's on vacation,
living it up, living the dream.
Cabana Boys, margaritas.
Wasn't able to do her part remotely, so she'll be back for the season finale for fun shenanigans and good times. Yeah.
So anything you want to tell the people, Christina? Any exciting news coming up?
Any exciting news?
I want to tell them to...
Goodness gracious. Sitting alone in a dark room, drinking and watching horror movies for Halloween.
Yeah. So we're a week past Halloween, guys, so we're still in the Halloween mood, clearly.
Good Halloween stuff you've been watching?
So
shows?
Hulu has this Halloween thing.
Halloween.
And I have been obsessed. Like, they have everything categorized. You can watch, like, even from all of your favorite shows, they're Halloween episodes.
Oh.
I've been binging that, and I watched Bad Hair.
What's that?
Oh, my God. Y'all not ready for Bad Hair? Okay, so, it's this whole controversy when it comes to black women in our weaves and stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, I'll be the first to admit to anyone, like, I still wear a weave. And at first, back in the day, I used to do this whole speech about it's just easier to maintain. Da, da, da. At the end of the day, I've just been brainwashed. I don't feel I look as good without one. Like, it's a dark reality. So
I think you look beautiful without it.
thank you.
I saw you, like, a couple weeks ago with your curls. It was so beautiful.
Oh,
you were so beautiful.
I've been working on it. I'm a lot more confident now. Like, I'll wear it for weeks at a time, especially if I can't afford to get my hair done.
Like, you're always beautiful, but you were, like, especially, like, amazing with your natural hair.
I'm already finna marry you now. Know we like to torture insects and shit.
That's true.
So this movie kind of digs deep, and there's like all these subtle, like, oh, you got to really catch all the nuances. But it's about this hair, this weave that she gets attached to her head, because this is real life. Like, it's not based off a real story, but back then, to do like anything in television, you had to get your hair straightened. So it pisses me off when people say things like, oh, well, you got a weave on, you're fake. But it's like, in order for us to operate in corporate America, we had to put weave in our heads. Yeah. That's the only way for us to support our families.
Eat a dick, bitch.
Exactly. So if we came in natural, these companies were like, ew, you look dirty and unclean. We're not going to hire you.
They were just intimidated.
Yes. So then we had to start putting weaves on our head, our head. So now you fast forward years later and everyone's like, you're being fake. And it's like, well, we've been brainwashed for centuries. Like, this has been ingrained in us.
Bitches are never happy.
Right. We had to put a weave in just to work. And so, anywho, I'm not going to give you all the history. If you want to know my history, I'll tell y'all. Reach out personally. But anywho, so the hair then on her head takes a life of its own. And in order for the hair to continue to stay beautiful, it has to be fed blood. Human blood. Yes. So the hair makes her start killing people, and the weave is sucking up the blood once she It's a crazy story. So I suggest everyone watch Bad Hair on Hulu.
That's like very Natasha.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. Every week on my Facebook, I do like a update for Netflix. I haven't done one for Hulu, so I haven't talked about that one yet, but it's a good show. What have you been watching?
What have I been watching? Oh, shit. I watched Midnight Gospel. It's on Netflix. It is based off of a podcast done by Duncan Trussell.
Okay.
And it's a podcast, but it's animated.
Oh, wow.
There's an animated portion to it, and he'll do a whole episode. Like, he'll have a guest, and they'll talk about, like, meditation. And they'll go through this crazy, like, trippy world where they're, like, going through this weird... It's really interesting. We should watch one. We should watch an episode. They're, like, 20 minutes long. It's made by the same, I think, creator or, like, animator that does Adventure Time. Ever watch Adventure Time?
I've heard of it.
That's really good, too. So I've finished watching that. It's really good. It's very deep. It makes you think. A lot of the stuff in there. It's, like, very trippy looking animation, but then they're talking about, like, death and accepting death, and another episode they're talking about, like, meditation, and it's really cool.
Oh, I bet that's good.
It's really good. Midnight Gospel. I also have been watching a lot of horror movies on Shudder. Shudder is like it's a subscription service, but for horror. So it's just horror.
Oh, I would love Shudder.
Movies, shows. It's like $5 a month. I'll give you my password if you want to log in.
Yes.
Yep.
Because I got a Hulu, Disney Plus, and Netflix, and I don't pay for any of them.
I give you my Shudder.
I'm a little homeless.
It's really
friend.
nice. They have some interesting, like, they started coming up with some original content too. So they have a few original movies. They have some creep show remakes.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna bug you for that, and then I'll give you guys my my suggestions from Shudder next week.
Ooh. We should talk about Shudder next week.
We should.
Yeah, talk about all the cool stuff on there. There's a really interesting movie that I watched on there. I didn't realize it was a show called Dragula. So instead of Dracula, but it's like drag queens that do like goth stuff. It's really amazing.
We should follow some of them and see if they'll promote our show.
Hello? Hello?
Well, that was a fun little recap. We usually don't do that at the end of the episodes, but that felt good.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I like that. Maybe we'll do that going forward to tell you guys what weird things we're watching.
Yeah, what bugs we're torturing.
Okay, because I'm gonna go back to doing that now that I know that it's normal. Well, well, guys, that does it for episode 9, season 1, Blood Sisterz podcast.
Heck yeah!
I'm Natasha Carr with
Christina Amata.
flirting with darkness and promoting weird brown girl joy.
Peace.
Peace. Until next time.
Till next time.